Welcome to Lake TV's Community Spotlight Show, brought to you by the great folks at Central Ozarks Medical Center, where your health is their mission. And our guest today, Reverend Jim Long. How is the Reverend Jim Long today?
Very well, thank you.
Excellent. Okay, now your church is the Anglican Church at the Lake.
Yes.
Right? You just changed your name to the Anglican Church. That's a mouthful there. That's tough to say.
It is, yeah. I think they like putting the Anglican at the beginning because it comes up first in the phone book.
There you go. That's a good idea, right? It's like AA Auto or something like that. Right. Those are the only people in front of you. So where is the Anglican Church at the Lake?
Well, we're right on Business 54 in Osage Beach, right by the golf course.
Okay.
And we actually meet in what is now a pub.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
It's called the Sanctuary Pub.
I've seen it, yeah.
And so inside of the Sanctuary Pub, there's a real sanctuary. You got to get past the beer taps.
Okay.
And then it used to be Lake Presbyterian Church.
Okay, cool.
And the building was sold, and then the new owners decided that they would be willing to rent it out for church. But during the weekdays, you can have a pint there.
Well, there you go. You kind of cover all the bases right there as you walk in the door. And that's right in the same area as the Osage Beach Town Hall and stuff like that.
That's correct.
Right there off of the Parkway. So your official title is Reverend, I believe. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So what is the difference between a reverend and a pastor and a father?
Well, they're all kind of honorifics that emphasize a different aspect of things. I mean, father is a pretty old title, go back to the Old Testament, or the Apostle Paul was a father to the churches. And the family implications of that are obvious. Pastor means shepherd.
Okay.
And so reverend is really a purely honorific. It's just sort of a way of giving respect to the person who is a pastor.
Okay.
And so you're a reverend or a revered shepherd.
Okay. So really, there's not much of a difference. It's not going to bother you if I call you Pastor Jim.
That won't bother me at all.
Okay.
Just don't call me late for dinner.
Exactly. Absolutely. So we specifically wanted to talk about Thanksgiving. We're moving into the Thanksgiving season here. From a Christian point of view, what is your favorite part of Thanksgiving? Do you have fond Thanksgiving memories from over the years?
I do. It's mostly memories of the family sitting around the table and eating more than we ought to.
Right, absolutely. Usually turkey and stuffing and mashed potatoes, unless you're a ham person, right? Or in my house, you get a little bit of everything because,
right.
You got to do that. What is your favorite food? Is it turkey and stuffing or?
I do like the turkey and stuffing. And of course, there are different ways to make the filling or the stuffing or whatever you call the stuff inside of the turkey. And we had two different traditions coming from the two sides of the family.
Okay.
And then, of course, you've lived in Texas. Texas has a whole different stuffing, which is just cornbread, which is made into stuffing. And so I enjoyed the stuffing. But, of course, Dad would, as part of the meal, sometime between the turkey getting done and the dessert arriving, we would go around the table and everybody would say something that they're thankful for.
Yeah.
And so there was kind of a personal, immediate aspect to it. And it wasn't just about eating.
Yeah.
It really was a time to thank the good Lord for all of the blessings that He had given.
It seems like that's kind of been forgotten in our society. It's more about the food and the football and less about being thankful, which is, I think, why it all started, right? Should Christians take part in Thanksgiving? Is this a Christian kind of a thing?
Oh, I think it absolutely is. Going back to the earliest Thanksgivings celebrated here. Now, there are a couple of others, and one in Texas and one in Florida that some people like to talk about. But when we think of our Thanksgiving traditions, it really kind of begins with the Pilgrims.
Yeah.
And they were very clearly and very deliberately giving thanks to God for the blessings that He bestowed upon them. First winter they were there, they had intended to land in Virginia. They were blown off course, and landed in what they called Northern Virginia, which we called Massachusetts.
Way Northern Virginia, yeah.
And it was not an easy winter. Half of them died from cold or from starvation. And with some help from the local tribes and from a fellow named Squanto, that's a story in and of itself.
Yeah.
God provided for them beyond what they could have imagined. And so they got together with the Native Americans in the area who had been so helpful to them, and had what we sometimes consider the first Thanksgiving, but really they weren't intending to establish a yearly tradition.
Yeah.
It was a natural outflow of the lives of people who believed in God and had a strong idea of His providence, that He had not only created them, but that He sustained them through that difficult period of time. And so it was a kind of a natural thing for people who, the closer you're connected to the idea that God is watching over you, the more inclined you are to say thank you.
Yeah.
And as we kind of forget that God is the one that provides for us, we move further and further from that. I remember we had an Indian woman in my church in New York City some years ago.
Yeah.
And she was in her 70s and had had a very serious round of cancer. And one Wednesday night when we used to in those days have a prayer service on Wednesday nights, evening prayer or evensong we called it. And she did not normally attend that service. She came every Sunday, but she was busy with her work. And anyway, she showed up on a Wednesday night. And it had been, I forget how many, maybe it was 2 years, she had been cancer-free. And she had come to church deliberately to give thanks to God for His healing.
Yeah.
And I was surprised because when we get over cancer or something, you're right, our first impulse isn't to go say, I'm going to go to church and say thank you to God, but that maybe it should be. And it was for her. And this was a natural impulse among the pilgrims who had a firm confidence in the providence of God, even in the midst of difficulty, and they wanted to say thank you.
Right, and that's a good point. I mean, they were given thanks after a winter where half of them died, but thanks that they survived. So we're going to continue to talk about Thanksgiving. Reverend Jim along with us. So don't go anywhere. This is the Lake TV Community Spotlight Show. At COMC, your health is our mission. Central Ozarks Medical Center offers 3 OBGYNs at the Osage Beach Clinic and 2 pediatricians with same-day appointments available. At COMC, our doors are open to everyone with 5 primary care locations conveniently located across the Ozarks. COMC for the best medical, dental, and behavioral health care. Get more info on how COMC can help you at centralozarks.org. COMC, where your health is our mission. Winter, spring, summer, or fall, Lake TV's got it all. We think it's hot stuff when things cool down. We spring into action when things start warming up. Of course, summer is one big, huge shootout on Lake TV. And we fall in love all over again when autumn rolls around. Winter, spring, summer, or fall, Lake TV's got it all. Welcome back to the COMC Community Spotlight Show. It is brought to you by the great folks at Central Ozarks Medical Center. We're talking Thanksgiving. We're into that season already. Reverend Jim Long with us from the Anglican Church at the Lake, which is off Osage Beach Parkway over there. So we're talking Thanksgiving stuff and how it got started. Really got started with Christians wanting to give thanks to God for surviving a tough winter. The Bible talks about being thankful a lot. Why is being thankful important?
Well, thankfulness is a directional word. It's a connectional word. It's different than happiness, right? You could be happy,
right?
Just maybe you had a good hot cup of coffee and you're happy about that, But happiness is a dangerous thing to unbelief, because as soon as you move from being happy about your cup of coffee to being thankful for your cup of coffee, it begins a movement that goes in a particular direction, makes a particular connection that ultimately leads you back to God. It's like when you become thankful, when you let it go, it's like letting go of a helium balloon, and it will eventually make its way right on up to God.
Really? Oh, that's pretty cool. That's a cool way to think about it. And then that, in a way, is one of the reasons why it is mentioned so many times, talked about so many times in the Bible.
In the Bible, you know, one of the names for the Christian communion service, and people get mixed up about this because it sounds like Christ, it's called the Eucharist.
Yeah.
And people think, oh, is that talking about Christ or something about the body of Christ? It is a word that means thanksgiving.
Interesting.
And at the communion service, they would give thanks to God's gift of his Son, who gave his body and shed his blood for our salvation.
Yeah.
In fact, the Apostle Paul in Romans 1 lists the lack of thankfulness as kind of the mark of the unrighteous person. Mm-hmm. And he's in a talk there, and ingratitude is right on the, if you've ever seen a truck balancing on a cliff and it's about to roll off the cliff, right at the balancing point between wickedness and really, going downhill, neither were they thankful.
Interesting.
And so thankfulness is the most appropriate response to people who recognize that God made us, that God sustains us, and also that God has provided for the forgiveness of our sins, for reconciliation to himself and to one another. I like to use the cross as a sign of God reconciles us first to himself and then fixes our relationships with other human beings. And why wouldn't we be the most thankful people on earth?
Yeah, but he does talk about that in Romans 1, about if you're not thankful, you start drifting away from God and your thinking becomes darkened.
And the darkness really becomes dark at that point.
Well,
but it involves suppressing what ought to be obvious to us.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think we in America, we are thankful for what we have, or have we forgotten and we take a lot of things for granted?
Well, it's interesting. When George Washington established Thanksgiving Day at the time that the Constitution was completed, he, at the behest of Congress, instituted a day of Thanksgiving. And when he winds up to the bottom of that, he mentions that he would be asking God to provide us for just the right amount of blessings that would be appropriate. And if you've ever read the book of Proverbs, there's a very interesting verse that says, "Don't let me be rich lest I forget you, and don't make me poor lest I, become sort of agitated in a way that would be sinful.
Right.
Give me just what I need." And so I think in America, we've been given so much more than what we need.
Yeah.
We don't even to thank God for our daily bread, we take our daily bread for granted, and we just imagine that everyone's always had their daily bread throughout history, and it's just not the case. We live in a very, very wealthy, even at the present time when we're struggling, we eat better than kings ate in some periods of history.
No doubt about it. And we just take it for granted, don't we? As a general, especially the younger generations, I think, that have just had it all the time, right? There are some older folks you run into that went through some really hard, dark, difficult times, but not so much in the children. Okay, so Thanksgiving, very important. Reverend Jim Long, so it's the Anglican Church at the Lake. How do folks get more information about your church?
Well, I think just come and visit.
Okay.
And we'll share with you. We will have a website that's being developed, but right now the best way to learn more about it is just to come and pay us a visit, or give us a call, and that probably would be the best way until we get the website up and running. Drop by some Sunday and say hello.
Sounds good. That's the Anglican Church at the Lake, Reverend Jim Long. Thank you, sir, and thank you for joining us for Lake TV's Community Spotlight Show.